We run professional development courses for the aerospace sector. We were interested in what their requirements were from graduates going into the sector, but the main focus of the project was to find out about those who are already working in the sector as to what their mathematical needs might be. Whereas I think in the past, continuing professional development activity has been seen as important, but not necessarily the core activity that we engage in. Now that situation is changing quite a lot. So there's some specific aims, and then firstly to look at the demand for such programs, but also more specifically maybe to understand either what would encourage or what would prevent people from participating in those kind of programs. The kind of information that we gathered straight away was that it's dominated by large employers, so 2/3 of all employees work for only 5% of the companies. That is a big issue because an important element of the current changes are to support small businesses and small organisations, and during this we found that quite difficult, how you actually get to find out who those people are and what their needs might be. About 1/3 are educated degree standards, so the highly educated workforce. But this is, I think, the interesting one for universities, as far as aerospace is concerned. They're expecting 50% of the workforce to be graduates, and a large number of that to be from those who are already working and being educated up to degree standard or beyond whilst they're in the workplace. The idea was that educating those who are working, and therefore some part-time education, is going to be very important. We then started looking at some specific cases to try and look at what kind of courses people might like. We'd already worked out from the interviews that really looking at mathematical topics was not the way to go. So we've generally looked at application areas where we would know that you can't really do this without a high level of mathematics, basically without undergraduate level mathematics. I was surprised that data analysis came down so low, but I would say that given the nature of the survey, almost any one of these would represent courses that would be worth following up. And one of the actions that we're going to be doing from this is that to develop the courses we've been running. I think one of the lessons we got from this study was the nature, the closeness of the relationship between ourselves and the company in developing the course, rather than us developing the course, even just going beyond just discussions, but actually having their staff and our staff developing the courses together. And we've decided to sort of concentrate on this top one and see whether, as a pilot, that's an approach that could work. Not a great deal of difference between sort of company view and the students on most of them, apart from maybe that one, and I think that's probably an issue of terminology and language rather than a perception of need. It's important for us to take these two together because both of these are the customer. So the company is the customer because they're going to pay for it, but the student here is the customer because it's their career that's being developed. Looking at barriers to participation, so there's no surprises there. From the interviews we had, probably I would say the most important thing to get right is the relevance. And the training manager would probably say that for the right course, they will make sure that happens. So obviously there is a cost element, but the relevance is the key issue to get right. Looking at how we might deliver the courses, again, no real surprises. One day, this is all to do with how much time people are being taken out from work. So 1 day short course, 3 day, so 1 week block delivery, being the most popular. I put my trick question in. I'm glad to say that the aerospace industry passed it with flying colours, that both employers and employees think that weekends and evenings are not for studying mathematics or other courses or carrying on with work. I think that was probably the most pleasing result of the whole survey, I think. This was, I think, a kind of an interesting statistic that came up, and this is about distance learning and e-learning. I think it's widely perceived that if we're going to deliver programs to people in the workplace, then distance learning and e-learning is an important part of that. This confirms the views I have with when I speak to part-time students, is that students who are at work do not appear to like the idea of distance learning at all. Partly it's because, and it's two things. I think it's confidence. in the study, and also the perception that they would actually like to have the resources in time to do the study. And those sort of two things are going together. It probably is mostly confidence, because if the figure changes quite significantly, if you say, well, no, it's a blended learning style where there will be some contact. But this is quite an important thing for us to take on board, because regardless of what that view is, actually distance learning is going to form an important part of delivering to people in the workplace, because there is no other way of doing it effectively. And it probably will be a blended a mix of contact and distance learning, but it can't be entirely by class contact. So we've actually got to get this right, and I think this indicates that we've actually got to put some time and effort into the research into distance learning so that the structures are correct. So what did we find out from all that? Well, I think we found out that most opportunities as far as this sector is concerned, and maybe same for others, are mostly for those who are already in the sector. I don't think from that research, the results of that research, if you were not already working with aerospace companies, you wouldn't suddenly say, oh, there's a large market here that isn't being satisfied by others. So in that sense, maybe that's a successful outcome from the model, because it's told you something in terms of whether it's worth entering a market that you weren't part of. On the mathematical side, it's surprising how little mathematics is used day to day in aerospace companies, I thought, after these discussions. Most of it is through computational models, a lot of it through templates. I don't think calculus was ever raised by the people I was talking to, only ever by me. The area of mathematics which was raised most frequently was matrices, as being, that's the one thing we need people to really understand. But as you probe more deeply, there is a definite need to understand mathematical models and how they relate to to the physical problem, and also possibly more, well, just as importantly, was to understand the output from computational models and how to use those kind of models securely. So it came up a time about people not understanding what the numbers mean. They press a button out. So the kind of things you hope wouldn't be a situation. But I didn't. So these are important issues for them. I didn't get the impression they were so important that they would sustain a CPD course. But they're probably important issues for how we design our undergraduate courses. And then in terms of delivery, so summarising what we found, these were the kind of things we asked. I mean, so all these were raised as being important. I think the two that sort of stood out for me, one was the distance learning issue, because that really means we have to be sure about the technical requirements of distance learning. And this was really about how easy it is to plan for this market, because the need often comes on from a company as a project-by-project basis, and it's driven by an immediate need. So how can you respond to that? That may be very, very difficult. So that's what we found. I think our main actions would be to do with the way we're reviewing our own program, and the way the relationship between ourselves and some of those companies, I think, will get much closer, so that those programs, it may be not distinguishable who's delivering the program, whether it's ourselves or the company. And some of the larger aerospace companies, they pretty much operate their own colleges within the companies. And so they're well capable of doing that. So our role in that is our role to improve the provision that they're providing, or provide the provision for them, is again something, as you might expect at the moment, is rather undecided, because we're in a quite difficult and grey areas at the moment.